Microphone check one, check two. Microphone check me, check you. Hey, what's up, everybody? So here's my story. Check this out. This is real life. I was reading a news article last week, right before Christmas. Unfortunately, two American workers died here in Texas. Now, people working in construction here in Texas, this is a big industry, and a lot of American workers are dying left and right at work, or they're being forced to work with broken limbs, and they're receiving no medical treatment. The workers' compensation claim or the workers' compensation laws here in Texas, they're broken. It's sort of like American workers don't have any rights here in Texas, from what I experience and news articles I read, and hearing about other people's stories and seeing how they're treated, mistreated. So here's my story. Going back to 2018, I was working for this construction company called, it's named the Allen Butler Construction Inc. It's based in Lubbock, Texas, and it has a second office now here in Amarillo, Texas. Right? They won a bid here in Amarillo, Texas, with TxDOT, to demolish and construct two bridges on I-27 and Hollywood Road here in Amarillo, Texas. Right? It's one of the main arteries that go down into like Austin and south of Texas from Amarillo. Uh, the project that the bid they won in the project estimated, they told me, was $74 million. But here's my story. I was involved in three severe work accidents. The first work accident, a superintendent, um, I was riding as a passenger in a vehicle company, and he reversed and collided into a heavy machinery roller and did a lot of damage to the back of the truck. Right. um, I had to take a urine analysis, even though I didn't do anything wrong, right? And it came back negative for drugs and alcohol, like you would expect it, right? And so the general superintendent threatened me. He told me, put me to the side from everybody, and he told me, hey, look, if you try to sue me, it's not going to work. He puts his hands on his waistband and his little cowboy jean jacket lifted up, and he had a gun, right, in his waistband, in his holster. And I tell him, hey, look, I don't know the Texas laws here. I'm not trying to sue anybody. I'm just trying to work. He asked me, how do I feel? I said, look, I have a headache. I think I have whiplash. And he's like, hey, just go home, take a hot shower and everything, and come back to work. So I did that. That's the first incident where I was denied medical treatment, and the company failed to report this to Texas Department of Workers' Compensation and their insurance carrier, Texas Mutual Insurance Company. Texas Mutual Insurance Company has a background here in Texas. The background is, back in 1993, Texas legislation had created Texas Mutual Insurance Company as a state workers' compensation insurer for employers, right? Protecting American workers, which is right. If you get hurt at work and it's the employer's negligence, like everything that's happening here in Texas, this is a common thing. People are dying. So it was Texas legislation that created Texas Mutual Insurance Company. So I got bad luck. It dissolved in around 2010. This is according to, I think, the Dallas Tribune, but I can't remember where I read it from. But you can look it up. Texas legislation creates Texas Mutual Insurance Company. Um, so that's a little background about Texas Mutual Insurance Company that insured the Allen Butler Construction Inc. Company. So that was my first work accident, Cinco de Mayo. Um, During this time, I met this coworker. He was a Messianic Jew because he had ZZ. And I was asking him, "You're a Jew and everything?" And he was like, "No, but I'm a Messianic Jew." And then we started talking and everything. I studied the Bible in Hebrew and Aramaic and Greek over here. I told him, "Yeah, I'm a Ben Anus, right? I'm a crypto Jew." And I told him, from both, from my mom's side and my dad's side, I'm Ashkenazi and Sephardic. And I just discovered this, right? So we became friends and everything. And um, the end of April, he invited me to go with his family and other families to pretty much observe Pesach. And I explained to him he can't eat lamb, all this stuff, right? But I'm like, all right, I'll go, And so I participated in it. But he said, and I told him, hey, you put your request in through the human resource manager, and I'll do the same thing and see if they let us off early that day. um, that Friday, right? So he said, "No, don't worry about it. I'll fill it out and request for both of us and everything." So he wrote down my name, and so we got it approved. We that day when we left, I think 2 p.m. or 1 p.m. on that Shabbat, that Friday. The superintendents were kind of mocking us and jeering at us, right? Because we're getting off work early. So after this, so I think this is where this violent discrimination really began to publicize, right? It became public to me, like public knowledge or something. Now, when I'm looking back at it, I see how I began to be treated a little different from everybody else. I'm Pascual Yaki, I'm Native Mexican, and I'm a Jew, half white, German, Irish, Yugoslovakian, Polish, Finland, even. And somebody in my ancestry goes all the way back to Mesopotamia. They go to West Africa and between Somalia and Ethiopia, and even to Asia. I forget where, but somewhere around Cambodia. So when people see me in person, they're like, "Man, people think I'm Asian, I'm Mexican, I'm native, I'm white, right? Russian, even have Russian blood and everything too. I forgot about that, Ukrainian blood, but Middle Eastern, all that." So I meet a lot of people because how I resemble people from the native country, right? And this is a beautiful thing. So I began to experience mistreatment. Single de Mayo, I was asked by the general superintendent, do I want to work that Saturday? It's overtime. I said, yeah, I'll work. I'm not an Orthodox Jew. I'm a B'nai Anus. I just discovered that, you know, great grandparents, and I have a Jewish, Sephardic surname and even an Ashkenazi surname, my mother's maiden names. Um, so I just want to put that out front because someone wonders why were you working on Shabbat? Well, hey, I got to work still too, right? And um, I was researching and studying the Bible and everything, and um, began to contact the local synagogue because I was interested in converting, right? And um, it never happened because of these work accidents. And let me tell you, so Cinco de Mayo came. The superintendent, I was working around 1 p.m., 2 p.m. Um, the superintendent. What happened was at the bridge, a dump valley semi truck had got stuck coming up a little ramp in the ground. Right, the belly dump got stuck in the ground. So the superintendent solution was for me to tie a chain around the excavator bucket. So all right, cool, I'll do it, and leave a little length out so that he can, this chain had a hook on it, so we can tie it to the belly dump, and that he could push it forward without using the actual bucket because it would damage the truck, the belly dump rear end, and to push it out. It gets stuck, right? And they're losing money. Don't want to pay more money to get a tow truck over here. So I did it. And I was tying the chain around the bucket, and for no, reasonable, from what I can observe, there was no explanation why this superintendent swung the bucket out. So I'm really like inches away from this bucket, and it hits me in my back, in my side. I think I tried to move out the way when it hit me, and it pushed me around to where it pushed me out at least 70, 80 feet from where I was squatted and working. The general superintendent saw it. I looked back to the general, superintendent. What the heck? He was screaming out, my fault. I didn't see you behind the bucket. I didn't see you behind the excavator bucket, right? There's witnesses that saw this. And the general superintendent waited for me to come to his, he's in it, his 200 or 300 feet away from this excavator that we're using throughout the bridge. We're using 2 or 3 simultaneously on this bridge. And he called me to the excavator. So I went up on the tracks. He asked what happened. I said, look, for no reason, this guy just swung his bucket out and it hit me. And you see me running with it. Literally in my mind, when it turned me around, my logical solution was to run with the momentum. And so when I told the general superintendent, he just turned around and ramped up the dang excavator and began to work. I'm standing on the tracks. So I jump off, like, what the heck, watching my back, trying to get away, retreating, right? This dude might try to kill me now because something don't sound right. I'm standing there, the ground surveyor, he told me, he's like, hey, look, go sit in the truck, drink some water, put the air conditioner on, and do you have any pain? I said, yeah, look at my stomach, it's sticking out, it's swollen. They didn't call 911. I was threatened again by another superintendent not to say nothing, by a foreman not to say anything. I had to work another 4 to 5 hours in this condition. And in my mind, if I quit this job, and I can't quit now, because if I quit, what? I mean, am I going to be compensated? I don't have insurance, right? In fact, I'm actually working here so I can have insurance and have benefits and get paid higher wages. I was only making $12 an hour, but I was able to learn a lot of things in 3 months at this construction company, to the point I was training new employees on heavy machinery, heavy rollers, and I was operating a front loader in 3 months. Inexperience. I never done construction in my life. For $12 an hour, and I was acting as the traffic coordinator, up to working with another supervisor from a subcontractor that owned these valley dumps, up to 30 of these trucks. Imagine that, all lined up on the high, off on the off ramp of the highway of I-27 and Hollywood Road, and that using hand signals and talking to these drivers through my cell phone, telling them when to come on the bridge, when to come off, traffic coordinating for $12 an hour, right? And originally, when I got hired, the general superintendent said that in 3 months that he'd review me, and if I learned a lot of stuff, and he said, hey, I'm gonna train you on the front loader too, so you can make more money and everything. I was like, all right, cool, that sounds all good, right? So I did everything. And when I called human resource, they, in 3 months, they said, hey, it's 6 months. You have to wait 6 months. I was like, yeah, that wasn't the agreement. Well, that's what we're saying now. That's what we told you. And I wasn't going to argue with them, right? But this is my second work accident. I'm denied medical treatment, forced to work in this condition. And I thought I could just shake it off. But from May 5th, 2018, up to June 2018, I went from 70 hours, sometimes 80 hours a week, to 9 hours a week. And the two superintendents that got me involved in these first two work accidents, right? Second one, I think, was an assault. And I'll tell you why. I'll tell you about my third work accident. Excuse me. Oh, so the two superintendents who got me involved in these work accidents and threatened me, and heard other people threatening me, they quit. Now, keep in mind, these guys are making over $100,000 a year. And looking back now, I think their conscience got the best of them, because they saw me still trying to work in pain with the swollen stomach. And so they quit. Now, I lost hours at work. I was never compensated for it. I was threatened. I'm not from Texas. I'm from Denver, Colorado. And everything's just off, right? But in my mind, I'm thinking I got to let this ride, like, to recover, right? And it got so bad, I started losing hours, but I was still hanging on to my job. I wasn't going to quit, because legally, the employer is responsible for my work accident. They're responsible, obligated by Texas law here. And this is like any other place in the United States of America. Their insurance is supposed to pay for my medical treatment, because these work accidents weren't my fault. I was actually assaulted on my second one. But now you see where I'm getting at, the point I'm making. I was assaulted. And I probably had a concussion. But June 18th came around, the week before I got crushed. My whole body, I only worked 9 hours. That's how bad the stomach pain was and the heartburn. I did go, eventually I went to JOY clinic, the JOY clinic here in Amarillo, Texas, saw a nurse practitioner. I didn't tell the person, the doctor, that it was from a work accident. I just said, look, my stomach's swollen and it hurts. I don't know what's going on. She bleed me so much, and check my stomach out. She referred me to see a gynecologist, right? No insurance. I'm working, but I'm indigent, so that they covered it. Northwest Texas Hospital covered it. So June 18th, I come back to work, and that morning I'm working with the crew. We're taking apart steel columns from the bridge, but we're using an excavator, and we're using the same method, tying the chain around the dang bucket with the hook. And once we unbolt these walls, because there's 4 walls to these columns, the excavator operator would pick them up, and north of us, he was stacking them. So there was confusion before 9 o'clock that morning. All these new workers, new laborers, they were giving hand signals to the excavator operator, causing confusion, right? Imagine that. You're in a heavy machinery and you have a crew, 4, 5, 6, 7 people throwing hand signals at you. You don't even know what they're doing because they're not trained. And you're going to cause a fatality out there or cause a work accident. Someone's going to get hurt. So I saw all this stuff, and I'm the lead laborer. And I'm the only one that was taught by this company how to give hand signals to the operators in the heavy machinery. So a lot of my job was dealing with hand signaling to semi-truck operators, right, drivers, and heavy machinery, all that stuff. And it was only verbally. It was like they verbally taught me, this is what this means, that, pretty much. And that was it. But I was the trained one, I guess, compared to everybody else. So I told the crew, I said, hold on, talk to the excavator operator. So I'm going to go over there and tell him, hey, I see the confusion. Just look at me, pay attention to me and my hand signals and my eyes, all right? I'm going to tell you when to rise this bucket up and when to bring it over to us, when we can connect, and, to make sure no one gets hurt, no one gets killed. He said, he agreed. I went back to the crew to tell him, hey, look, I just told his excavator operator to pay attention to me. So I want all you guys to stop giving hand signaling to this operator because you're causing mass confusion with him. I'm the one that's going to give the hand signaling. I was working with the foreman, so he probably got mad too, right? Because I'm just a laborer, inexperienced laborer, but look how much I learned in 3 months, let alone by this time 6 months. So the bucket's on the ground. The excavator is in low throttle. How do I know this? Because you can hear the engine when they go to full throttle, that engine roars, right? And when it's low throttle, it's like a low hum. So I told him, again, thumbs up, turned around, went back to working with everybody. The foreman was on the right side of me, about 4 feet, not even 4 feet, 3 feet, 3.5 feet away from me. He has the drill bit gun. He's unscrewing the bolts. What I had to do was unscrew the bolts and hold on to them. So next I'm in squat position working back to the excavator bucket. Already had all this discussion with everybody. So I'm preventing myself from getting killed and everybody else from getting killed, right? This operator is in heavy machinery. Nothing's going to happen to him because he's protected in that heavy machinery. So next thing you know, I'm hearing plastic crumbling. I'm like, man, what's that sound? So I try to kind of, lift it up a little bit. And I felt pressure on my head and my neck. I was like, oh my God, I'm being crushed. I didn't know by what, but obviously this excavator bucket, because earlier what was going on, right? Plus my 2 work accidents. My last thought in my mind was, I'm being, oh my God, I'm being crushed. I need to get from underneath this excavator bucket. He didn't slam the bucket on me. He lowered it slowly on my hard hat and knocked me out unconscious. I woke up, 60, 70 feet from where I was working, face down, in a huge puddle of water, at least 3.5 inches deep. I didn't wake up choking. I don't know how long I was unconscious for, but I was soaked. And when I came to, I immediately looked back at the crew and the excavator operator, right? I couldn't believe my eyes. What I saw, these dudes were still working like they didn't see me get crushed. And if anybody has experience as an excavator operator, it's impossible to crush a coworker, right? Because your eyes are always on that bucket. And so in my mind, I panicked and I'm like, I need to get up because somebody could run over me in heavy machinery, right? So I look at the foreman, 2 foremen at the bridge, the concrete finisher foreman and their crews, and me and one of them, right, make eye contact. So I get up, waving at him, and I went unconscious again. And I woke up with him, and his brother was a foreman, and their crew. What happened? I said, man, I was crushed on my head and my neck. They're like, lift your shirt up. They're like, here. They start lifting my shirt up, and they're like, oh my God, it's bad, it's swollen. In my mind, I'm thinking there's flesh and bone that's mangled back there, okay, and I'm gonna die. I'm panicking now. Nobody called 911. No one had, you know, they called the general superintendent. And I remember talking to him, and he asked me, do I need medical treatment? I said, so I, took a few seconds to assess the situation. I said, yeah. It might have been longer than a few seconds. I know it took a while for me to respond. I said, yeah, I need medical treatment, right? Okay, I'll be there. And this guy shows up 3 hours, 2.5 hours later. So when I came back, everything seemed surreal. When I was with the crew, when they lifted up my shirt and everything, it was like I was coming back from a far distance in my mind. Everything looked surreal. I was confused. I was panicking. Um, I was confused because nobody was calling 911. I had my phone on me. I should have called 911. But once again, I'm relying on humanity. And, this did psychologically, it scarred me. I don't trust people no more, right? And other situations that I'll get at, other events that transpire after this is why I have a trust issue now with people, especially medical doctors, police officers, judges, court systems, the mayor here, Ginger Nelson, doctors, psychiatrists, you know. So eventually, they give me, so I can prove everything that I'm telling the viewer right now. So keep in mind, the question is the Texas government a tyranny now? And you, the viewer, listen to my story and answer for yourself. So that was my third work accident. 7.5 hours later, I actually seen a nurse practitioner at the clinic. She took x-rays, nothing was broken, sent me back to work. She gave me a shot for the swelling of my neck and my back. I took pictures of a picture of my back. I had my ex-girlfriend. She argued with me. She didn't want to take the picture of my back when I went home later on that night. Like I had to beg her. So everything was confusing to me at this time. It didn't make sense, even from my ex-girlfriend. But she was my girlfriend at the time. Now she's my ex-girlfriend. I had to work the next day, in the following day. And when I went to my follow-up, it was a different nurse practitioner. This nurse in an examination room, the nurse practitioner, she was Latina. I think she's Mexican, conservative Mexican American. Okay. And, I was saying Baruch Hashem and everything. And the nurse, again was asking me, and I was telling her, hey, just a couple of days ago, I got crushed. I could have died. God save me. And I'm blessing Hashem in Hebrew. And so I explained to her, it's like, what race are you? I said, I'm Pasquale Yaki. I'm Native Mexican and I'm a Jew. Oh, that's cool. So I think a lot of this, and at work, my religion, my identity, my race, right? Or my culture, my skin color, all that played a factor into me getting abused out there at that job site and now at this urgent healthcare clinic. The nurse practitioner was arguing with me, telling me that I was lying about my work accident. She told me that I was only, verbatimly, I was only hit in the head with an excavator bucket. Therefore, I have no injuries. I'm lying, implying that I'm a criminal, all this stuff, right? And I just finally said, hey, I'm ready to go back to work. I'm not going to argue with you because you weren't there. How, and I asked her, how are you? Why are you telling me what happened? Were you there? She didn't want to answer back and everything. I said, well, hey, I'm going back to work. So I went back to work. I left the clinic. They gave me a patient summary, no diagnoses. I had to give it to my employer. But on my way back home, right? So I told this nurse practitioner, I got a headache, my vision's blurred, I feel nauseous. I feel like, when I eat food and drink water, it's hard to swallow. It's taking me an hour to eat. It's taking me like 45 minutes to an hour just to take a shower and to dry off and to get dressed, all this stuff, right? And I was lying because that's what she was telling me. And so when I was released on the highway, during this time, these 2 or 3 days, prior to, and during, and after this visit at this Care Today urgent healthcare clinic off of I-40 and Grand Street here in Amarillo, Texas, I was swerving always to the left. I don't know why. But I told his doctor, and told his doctor, look, my seatbelt, when I put it on, I feel like it's crushing me, like it's suffocating me, and I'm having a hard time breathing at times. Just wouldn't listen to me, wouldn't examine my body, nothing, right? So I pulled over, called my general superintendent, and he asked what happened. I said, this doctor is saying I wasn't crushed. She said she's minimizing my work accident. She's saying I only got hit in the head and I have no injuries. And she's like, really? Like, yeah. So I said, look, I called because I'm not coming back to work. Can I have this day off? I feel sick. I feel dizzy. I'm swerving to the left. I don't know why. Visions, all this stuff. So he's like, yeah, let me know what happens tomorrow if you're coming to work and everything. And so I went home and I was laying on my bed and I was ready to go to sleep because I just, headache, just didn't feel good, right? Um, I get a phone call from the same clinic. A nurse called me and she told me that the medical doctor viewed my chart and said I have symptoms of a concussion and I need to go quickly to the nearest hospital. And I was like, I don't know where the hospital's at because I'm from Denver, Colorado. I've been here. I was only here in Texas at this time, like a year and a half or something, right? And she told me there's two hospitals right next to each other. One is Baptist St. Anthony, the other one is Northwest Texas Hospital. And she's like, which one do you want to go to? I said, can I drive? She's like, if you feel like you're capable, you can. I said, yeah, I think I could drive. So I'll go to Baptist St. Anthony. Wrong decision. Why? Because this is a church organized hospital. I know a lot of viewers are Christians and get offended. Just understand, I used to be a Christian too. I'm actually was Christianized as a baby because my family are Catholic or Roman Catholic Christians. All right. The real Christianity, if you want to say in that sense, but study your church history if you want to disagree. So I'm not offending anybody. So it's not like I didn't believe in Jesus Christ at one time. And, at this point, I read the Bible in Hebrew, Aramaic, and New Testament Greek. So I know what I'm talking about. I go straight to the source of the Bible in these languages. But it was a bad decision because when I went there, they put me in a neck brace. They didn't do MRIs on my head, but they did another one, not X-rays. Forget what the other one is called. And the medical doctor, after this, the medical doctor came and told me that there's nothing wrong. I only have a post-traumatic headache. I was just confused, right? Like, wow. And the way she said to me was like she was condescending to me, talking to me like I was a subhuman or unintelligent. And she said she's going to send this report to my primary care provider at Care Today. Because remember, Care Today is the one that told me to go to one of these hospitals. And the nurse also told me, don't worry, because I'm going to call ahead of time to the emergency department to let them know that you're driving over there with symptoms of a head concussion. This stuff sounds serious, right? Good thing I didn't get in a wreck. I didn't kill myself or kill anybody else. And a post-traumatic headache was the first diagnosis. That was June 20th, 2018. 2 days later, I was crushed on June 18, 2018. And that was the first diagnosis the doctor told me at the emergency department at Baptist St. Anthony. And they told me, if the symptoms get worse, come back. Yeah, I came back 2 days later, June 22nd, right? The examination. I finally got my medical file this year, 4 years later, from Texas Mutual Insurance Company. And the whole month, like 5 weeks at this urgent healthcare clinic, she never diagnosed me with anything. She would argue with me and I don't know why I kept coming back. Why would I keep coming back to these follow-up visits if she's telling me I'm not injured? Why? Why would a person keep coming back to a doctor that's just arguing with them and screaming at them, accusing them of insurance fraud, right? Treating you like a criminal and all this stuff. So eventually I just told, this doctor, I'm done. I'm not coming here. I'm going to switch clinics. And I did. And I went to Concentra here in Amarillo, Texas. It's the only Concentra here off of Kentucky Road and I think I-40. So, the doctors never verbally told me I had any injuries, but in my patient summary, there's like 3 diagnoses. My neck was sprained and neck was strained. My thoracic was sprained and strained. And I think I had a lumbar sprain, which I saw different times, right? 3 or 4 visits. But I kept forgetting these diagnoses. So I went into these examination rooms. At this point, I feel like I'm being interrogated. These doctors aren't telling me nothing. They're just telling me I'm not injured, right? Even though I'm receiving my patient summary, but I keep forgetting about these patients. I even at times I even took the patient summary to some of my follow-up visits, and I still forgot I had it. I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know I was going through shock. I didn't know I had multiple brain injuries, multiple neck injuries, multiple back body injuries, right? And so basically, eventually at Concentra, so Texas Mutual Insurance Company on June or August 9th had contacted a medical doctor, and they kept that week, they kept, requesting from the medical doctor to release me from work. I didn't know this at the time. I found out this year. And he put on the paper, I have his handwriting on his paper that's been given to me by Texas Mutual Insurance Company, that he wasn't releasing me from work. So financially, Texas Mutual Insurance Company is supposed to compensate me, because if I was off work and no one told me I was off of work. Now imagine me working in this condition. If I would have went to a construction company operating heavy machinery and I had no injuries, right? I could have caused a fatality within myself or other workers, or public. And so August 10th, I found out this year through Texas Department of Workers' Compensation. So Texas Mutual Insurance Company set up an appointment. Somehow they went over the head of this medical doctor and set me an appointment up at this clinic with the doctor, a gynecologist named Ernesto Jesus Mendez. He's from Plainview, Texas. He's not from Amarillo, Texas. So anybody knows this guy. So be careful, women. This guy's a criminal. And they set this appointment up, and it was illegal because Texas Department of Workers' Compensation never knew about this appointment. This is why people need to follow the law to protect yourself and other people, right? To avoid being in a situation where you get assaulted. So in this, August 10th, the physical therapist doctor released me from his care. Right after that, I had my appointment, but it's actually with the physician assistant that I was already seeing at this clinic. And this is around after 9:30. He finally came in, right? So I was in his examination room at 8:30 that morning, and I didn't see him for an hour later. So looking back during this time, I could prove that I was in these urgent healthcare clinics in their examination rooms up to, from 1 hour up to 6 hours, different occasions, and walking away with no medical diagnoses. That's illegal right there. And I didn't know and understand what was happening at this time, because I'm panicking. I need medical treatment, but I'm being abused. So the physician assistant comes in and tells me that according to Texas worker compensation law, he can't release me back to work. I tell him I didn't know I was off of work. He goes, and he tells me, he says, look, so there's a medical doctor here. His name's Ernesto, and he's going to treat you, and he's a medical doctor, and he's going to release you back to work. So while he's telling me this, Ernesto cracks the door open, all mean looking, right? And tells Alan, hey, I need to talk to you. And Alan will try to introduce me to him, and this doctor wasn't having it. Like, I come out here, I need to talk to you. So they go, 10 minutes, 15 minutes go by. This doctor comes in, Dr. Ernesto Jesus Mendez. I'm sitting down in examination, in an examination room in a chair. And he asked me, hey, what's going on? What's here? I said, look, I'm tired of being discriminated. And he's like, well, what race do you, what do you think I am? I said, you're Chicano or Latino or Mexican. I said, I'm Native Mexican American, and I'm half white. I'm half German. I'm a Jew. Oh, okay. And, he's like, so what symptoms are you experiencing? What's going on in your body? And I said, look, my neck feel like it's swollen, my back, it's hard to swallow, all this stuff, right? I aggravated my knees and my arm in physical therapy. They still continued making me, or wanted me to continue physical therapy, and I felt obliged that I had to, right? Had to comply with the physical therapist doctor orders, right? This is Texas, this is a workers' compensation claim. You got to listen to the doctors, because they're supposedly looking out for your best interest and trying to rehabilitate you so that you can return to work. And so when I'm telling him, Dr. Mendez, what's going on, Man, he just snaps on me and says, "Shut the fuck up. Shut the fuck up." And I looked at him stunned. I've never been mistreated this way, cussed out by anybody. Now the nurse practitioners were arguing with me, and raising their voice, right, pretty much screaming, yelling at me. This guy is cussing at me, and it's a man, but he's an older man, an elderly, right? He was like in his 70s at the time, and so I didn't say nothing. Then he says, "Now tell me what's going on," or something to that effect, and um, I began to tell him the same thing. He started screaming at me, "Shut the fuck up! You're lying. If you thought you're going to get money from this insurance company, you're not. You're going back to work. I'm releasing you back to work today." So all I said to him was, "Look, you want to be a man and threaten me and accusing me of committing a crime? Then write this down in writing and sign your name to it and send me on my way." He's like, "Fuck that! I ain't doing this." I'm not saying any of that, right? I really don't like cussing, but I'm gonna cuss in this video like I didn't cuss when I told Texas Medical Board last year about this assault, because that's how real this is. Their own investigators believe my story, especially when I show them the police report and show them what this dang doctor told the police officers, right? So he wouldn't. He's like, "Fuck that! I'm not signing anything. You're going back to work." So I said, "Hey, look, I'm going to record you with my phone for the remainder of this, for the duration of this appointment." So I'm reaching in my pocket, got my phone in my hand. I'm leaning forward because when I say it, I can't sit. This is still 4.5 years later, and I still can't normally sit in the chair. The hematoma in my stomach is just crazy. The pain in my neck makes me wonder if my neck and my back broken. How severe is this hematoma? I need surgery. Rotator cuffs torn, right arm swollen, right hand swollen. 4.5 years later, knees just hurt when I walk, when I move. One diagnosis I have is, check this out. My whole left body was diagnosed with a contusion. Where did they get this from? Because I didn't see this in my body. It was from when I went to the BSA emergency department on June 20th, and they did their not the MRI, not an X-ray, but I can't remember which one they did. That's where these injuries were coming from. The contusion were inside my body, my muscles, and all that, right? So this dude assaults me. I don't know how he did it, but he knocked me out unconscious. And what brought me back conscious, right? To being conscious was what woke me up was something was ripping my phone from my hand or trying to pry away my phone. Now, this makes me wonder if I died, because when you're knocked unconscious, your body goes limp. But in medical and in history and in wars and everything, people really die. Soldiers die on the battlefield gripping a gun. They call it death grip, and they die clutching. The muscles get so intense they're clutching on their weapon, and eventually they have to cut their fingers off to get the gun away from the dead soldier. Right? It's a death grip. So it woke me up. And I'm like, "What happened?" And I'm seeing stars, everything's black. And I'm like, "Man, his doctor just assaulted me." So I during this thinking, I'm trying to resist now, because that's anyone's natural reaction, I would assume, right? Someone's taking something from you, you're gonna try to prevent them from taking it, right? Then I remembered and I understood what happened. And we had a little hand wrestling match. I'm leaning forward, something's on my back and my head and my neck, right? So I'm leaning forward now. So I'm like in this position. And I let go of the phone as a sign of surrender. That's what I was thinking in my mind. Let the phone go. It's a sign of surrender. He's a medical doctor. He ain't going to do nothing. He's going to stop attacking me, right? This cat stayed on top of my neck and my back. How do I know that? Because I couldn't sit up. And so this happened in split seconds, right? And I felt burning in the back of my head and my neck, down my back. So I panicked now. And I come up, and in my mind, I can't see nothing. I'm panicking. This dude just attacked me. He's probably going to try to kill me, right? So my mind was to grab him and to slam him in the computer that was sitting on top of the desk, right? That's what I did in my mind. Did I physically do it? I did have control of him. I did have him. I thought I picked him up and slammed him. And when I did that, I was trying to immobilize this guy. So I'm a big guy, and this is a small guy. He's probably like 5'7", right? I weigh 220. He weighs probably like 170 or 150, right? But I couldn't see nothing. And I scrambled to the wall, feeling the wall, and I finally found the doorknob, and I got this feeling that he's going to attack me again, right? And I can't see nothing. I don't know why I couldn't see. This is probably a minute later after I was assaulted, right? Knocked unconscious, and I get out the door, and as I'm going out, my vision's coming back, and I turn around, make sure he ain't coming up from the back because I had that notion, that feeling he's going to attack me on my back, attack my back, right? And he was standing there with my cell phone, and he erased what happened. So I started walking down the hallway, right, dizzy, all this stuff, and yelling, saying, "Hey, I need help. This doctor just assaulted me. Call the cops." Man, these nurses and all these doctors didn't do nothing like that. I was yelling so loud that the physical therapist doctor, who's next door, but part of this clinic, came rushing over. What happened? I said, "Look, this medical doctor assaulted me over my phone. He was threatening me." And this doctor comes out the examination room down the hallway with my phone. And I said, "Look, he got my phone." And he looks up and he sees everybody staring at him. And he's like, he tried to record me with his phone. And he walked up, he was going to give the phone to me. And this physical therapist doctor, I think he read my body language, right? I'm thinking this medical doctor is going to attack me. Now I got the chance to just to freaking crack him right in his mouth or something, right? I got to immobilize this dude because in my mind, it seems he's coming to attack me. But in reality, he was coming to bring my phone to me. So the physical therapist doctor jumps in between us and says, "Here, give me the phone. I'll give it to him and I'll escort him outside." So all that transpired. Once we got outside, his physical therapist doctor invited me to come back to the clinic. He said, "Look, you come talk to the director or the supervisor and tell him what happened." I said, "No, I'm going home. I'm calling the cops. I need to get away from here before this dude attacks me or I attack him." Right? So I go home, call 911. Ambulance comes. Paramedics look at me. They say, "You need to go to the hospital because of swelling in your neck and your back." I said, "All right." They're like, "Do you want to go with us? We'll take you." I said, "Hey, I'm going to drive down there because I don't have no way to get back home." They're like, "All right." And the police officers took pictures, took my statements, all this stuff down, right? And went to the hospital. So from that point forward, for the next 2 months, the hospital, I went to the Northwest Texas Hospital, the emergency department. They wouldn't release the patient summary because I told the doctor I was assaulted by another, a different medical doctor at the Concentra. But he diagnosed me with nerve injuries in my neck, my back, and my whole right arm was swollen in my hand. But it took 2 months for this hospital to give me that patient summary. Now, the following week, the police officer gave me a card, told me to contact this detective named Wesley Brown, right? He's a sergeant down there, violent crime. So I call him, tell him what's going on. He said, "Hey, call me back in a couple of days. I need to investigate this." So I did what he told me, call back in a couple of days. This dude on the phone starts threatening me and telling me that if I want to press charges on the medical doctor, he would press charges on me. I say, "Hey, I know my rights, so go ahead." Right? And I tell him, and prior to this, I tell him about how the hospital won't release that patient summary. That I actually need him to go down there and go get it. This is illegal. They're covering up assault from a medical doctor, right? This guy became a medical doctor back in the late 1970s, and he's a gynecologist. So you women out here in Texas, if you know Ernesto Jesus Mendez, yeah, don't believe me. And if this dude sexually assaults you, God forbid, or attacks you, or does anything to you, or harms you, causes bodily injury, you were warned. So, and you can contact Texas Medical Board and ask about them. They'll tell you about this assault if they want to. So that's where I got threatened by this detective, got charges pressed on me, right? So in October, so this is, in August still, after August the 10th, like around, I think, August the 15th or something, or 14th. So, this is what I'm going through. It's just so much. I want to keep going in detail. It's 44 minutes in this video. I don't know if people are going to want to just watch this video for hours, but that abuse, that discrimination, it hasn't stopped. I haven't received medical treatment. I'm being threatened by, security guards at these urgent healthcare clinics. I'm now on Social Security, and I went to the Regency Health Clinic here in Amarillo, Texas. off of like Southwest 31st or something by the Walmart, next door to the Walmart. Now, this medical doctor told me that he wouldn't medically treat me until he gets my medical file from the Baptist St. Anthony Hospital and the Northwest Texas Hospital. So I called this clinic last week. My appointment was December 6, 2022, 3 weeks ago. And I'm in pain, mad pain, from all these injuries and stuff. And so I talked to the nurse. She told me he won't treat me. That at first she said they got my medical file. I said, okay, so is he going to step and follow it? She's like, for what? All we got is your psychiatry. I was at the hospital at the Pavilion, the mental health hospital. Okay, just last month, I was arrested, right, and sent there. But this is even a bad thing happened. I was arrested. I didn't do anything wrong, and I finally got the psychiatrist. Right, I had nurse practitioners advocating to diagnose me with post-traumatic stress disorder because the last 3 years I've been going to the Texas Panhandle centers, and a psychiatrist was saying I have bipolar, and I said, no, this sounds like PTSD. Look, something don't sound right. But remember, I'm in a confused mind. When I got crushed, everything looked surreal. It seemed like there's a distance between me and my coworkers and everybody after that. It seemed like I was coming back from a long distance, but mentally. Not physically understood. These guys were just, inches away from me, even touching me and checking my back out, but from that point forward, it seemed like I was coming from a distance. And so I think I died, but that's my near-death experience. And what I saw over there, basically in my near-death experience, I was floating in the universe. That was it. I felt the power, felt the hum, the sound of power. Saw the galaxies. I didn't see planets. I just saw stars and galaxies and gases and all this stuff, right? Light. And that was it. I don't know how long I was unconscious when I got crushed. But I finally got diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder. And all this stuff happened. All this stuff. Threatened by police. I left here at Amarillo, Texas in October 2018 because Sergeant Lane, the internal affairs sergeant. So when I got this patient summary, I went there to file a complaint against Sergeant Wesley Brown, this internal affairs sergeant named Lane, Lane. He told me he wasn't going to allow me to fill out any complaints on his police officers, that I couldn't turn in the patient summary from the assault as evidence. He asked me, who are you anyways? And, I gave him my ID, and he looked it up, and he told me that the municipal court judge had this case and he was going to drop it because of lack of evidence. And the best thing for me was to go home. I took that as a threat. I went back to Denver. I drove in this condition back to Denver, Colorado that day. Ended up the following morning in Denver, Colorado. So I left here like around 2 or 3, right? But do you see how long it took for me to get there? It's only like an 8, at the most 9-hour drive. There was no snow, no rain, nothing. Good weather to travel. And now I'm thinking about it. I didn't realize this, but that morning I got to Denver like around 5 o'clock in the morning, and I left her around 4 p.m. See the condition that I was in? But I did stop at the emergency department in New Mexico because my neck and everything, it was hard to drive. It's like symptoms were getting worse, right? I felt like I was crushed, swallowing and, choking on little. It took an hour for me to start eating my meals, because of the swelling. I still had a swelling in my neck, all that. It still affects me today. And at the Regency, I'm still being denied. First time in my life, a medical doctor won't treat me because he doesn't have my medical file. What kind of crap is that? Right? But keep in mind, these doctors and nurse practitioners, they're not all just white. There's Mexican American, right? Latinos, Latinas. Okay. So, but keep in mind, I'm Native Mexican American. I'm a Pascua Yaqui, and I'm a Jew. So I got discriminated by, Mexican Americans, right? Tex Mexicans. They're different from Chicanos. Trust me on that. And from white Americans, right? Now, I have a problem with Tex Mexicans. We're all brown, right? But I'm against people that have higher education and have a lot of power, a lot of money, and they can commit crime, right? And the law protects them, right? The law further victimizes victims. But if me and you commit a crime down here, us being poor, uneducated, we get prosecuted. You got Texas is what leads the country and leads the world in the most penitentiaries in the world, right? So you go to prison. If you ever been in prison, and even yourself, your personal experience, you've been in prison, right? No matter who you are, what skin color you are, is because you lack money, education, you weren't powerful like them, right? And a lot of times you're going to be innocent too, right? So that's what I'm against right there. And this is what's happened. This is currently happening. The FBI, they told me they don't investigate things like this. The Department of Justice, they won't respond to my complaints. Texas Department of Public Safety, I called them 2 times. I was hung up. You seen what happened in Uvalde, Texas. I told my psychiatrist last 3 years, you need to file a complaint. Just take that leap of faith with me. And I showed him I have injuries, right? Medical file and stuff that I did have. She didn't do it. But when what happened at Uvalde, Texas, see, you have to understand, here in Texas, there's Mexican Americans that are police officers, right? Doctors, health professionals, people with higher education, money, influence. They're committing crime and they're getting away with the crime. They're protected by Texas government. That's why I'm asking the viewer, is Texas now, Texas government a tyranny? It sure sounds like it to me if you hear my experience. But remember, I had a coworker who showed me his foot at the same company after my first work accident, and his foot was broken a year after the fact. And he told me if he filed a workers' compensation claim or got an attorney, that he would be blackballed here in Texas. And I asked him, what does blackball mean? He said, he wouldn't, if he got an attorney, it wouldn't work. He would lose the case, and he wouldn't be able to work again in Texas. Now, this is the Mexican American working a year after the fact with a broken foot. And he told me, man, I go to his clinic in Lubbock. I didn't get the name, but he lives in Lubbock and in Texas, and he goes to this urgent healthcare clinic in Lubbock at this time. And Ellen Butler Construction employer, or the owner, was paying out of their pocket, the company's pocket, to pay for his medical treatment. But when he showed me, he had a club foot. It was black. It was bruised, still swollen. It was disgusting. I was like, dang. And he told me, he goes, I know it's broken, but they're telling me it's only sprained. And that if he tries to do something, he would get fired and he wouldn't be able to work in Texas, and no attorney. He wouldn't win in court, right? So that's the common knowledge here in Amarillo, Texas. I don't know about the rest of Texas, but that's the common knowledge over here. And this is my story to America, right? So hopefully President Joe Biden hears this story. Hopefully the Department of Justice, right? The president tells the Department of Justice, why haven't you answered this guy's complaint? Because I have my complaint numbers, right? The receipts. When you make a complaint with the Department of Justice, you can't rely on the government here. They're actually targeting Mexican Americans and violently killing people out here and covering it up. See, people in America, we're in a very confusing time now. And learn from this story and this experience. But I'm trying to warn you now. When you go to work, I'm not trying to terrify you and make you afraid at work, but keep your eyes open and be aware of who you're working with, who you're around, what kind of work you're doing. Because these cats are dying over here in Texas like it ain't, man, like they're flies. They're dropping like flies. I don't mean to disrespect anybody. Even police officers are dying here. It's crazy all over Texas. And I made this video because last week I was reading this news article about 2 workers that were working inside of a trench, and the trench collapsed, but the FBI got involved. So last night I was, because I have brain injuries. So the injuries I have are 100 catastrophic injuries, contusions to my brain, to my scalp, neck sprain, strains throughout my neck, my back, just my whole body. And these doctors never told me about it. And no attorneys will represent me. I had an attorney, and the name of this law firm is Shanahan and McNaughton. They were based in Austin, but they moved to Dallas, I believe. Don't trust this law firm. I still need to file a complaint with Texas State Board to file a complaint how they did me dirty, because when I hired them in 2019 of January, McNaughton kept telling me she couldn't do nothing. So everyone that's involved in my workers' compensation claim is Texas Department of Workers' Compensation. They know about the assault. They know about everything I'm telling you, the viewer. They're allowing it to happen. Amarillo Police Department, right? Texas Department of Public Safety, Mayor Ginger Nelson, um, the Texas Office of the Injured Employee Council. So I've done everything I can, right? So the last 4.5 years, I reached out to over 80 attorneys here in Texas and outside Texas. And once they hear about this company, Allen Butler Construction Inc., they don't want to represent me. And they kept telling me, right, for the first 2 years, they don't handle these kind of cases. Civil rights attorneys, all this stuff, right? Now, after the 2 years, right, the last 2 years, because this is 4.5 years ago, last 2.5 years, now the same attorneys are saying we can't help you because the statute of limitation has passed 2 years, right? But this is racism. Mexican Americans can't have an opinion, can't be intelligent, can't be educated. I studied the Bible in Hebrew, Aramaic, and Greek. I read these languages in biblical Hebrew. So I understand what they're telling me, and I know there's laws put in place when you have a government violently discriminate against you, right? They prosecute you, but they won't equally protect you. So I'm sure there's laws, right? And there is laws. If so, the law is, I forget what it's called, but it's really what it means is that if I could show the court good cause, I didn't know about these injuries, so these personal injury attorneys, they know all this stuff. They went to college education, or they went to colleges, right? They have higher education. They can easily prove, because these documents I have, this is all from Texas Mutual Insurance Company, Texas Department of Workers' Compensation, the Texas Office of the Injured Employee Council, Shanahan and McNaughton Law Firm, right? The Amarillo Police Department, Baptist St. Anthony Hospital, Northwest Texas Hospital, the J.O. Wyatt Clinic, Urgent Healthcare Clinic, right? Care Today, Urgent Healthcare Clinic, Northwest Texas Urgent Healthcare Clinic off of Southwest, I think, in 31st. But I could prove all this stuff that I'm talking about. That's the crazy thing. But during this time, I was confused, surreal. I'm not lying to you guys. Last summer, um, my wife went to the courts and had me involuntarily committed to the pavilion because I was acting strange. Now, I'll tell you why I was acting strange. So last February, I had a hearing with the Texas Medical Board. I saw the top leading medical doctors, right? They didn't do anything. They're actually believing the doctor and accusing me of asking this medical doctor. So this is what Ernesto is trying to say now, that I asked him for drugs. I asked him for painkillers, right? I never did. But their own investigators believed my story after I showed them the police report, because the doctor didn't say he assaulted me, right? But he did tell the police officers he did indeed decided to take my phone from me. So he just incriminated himself, wasn't arrested. I was charged. He was charged. It got dropped. I couldn't turn in for, the evidence. Nothing, right? No due process, nothing. No protection of the law, nothing, right? And that was the hearing with the Texas Medical Board. So, everything is just crazy. It's off. I'm recovering outside of medical treatment. Just right now, my stomach, the hematoma, it hurts so bad. Makes me want to cry. I don't know how I do this every day, except for my understanding that God is real. I don't believe God is real. I understand God is real. And what I'm preaching over here, right? The Basora Hatorah, the laws, God's laws about people's behavior and the way you talk and dress, all this stuff, right? And this is the thing that I was being persecuted for, or being attacked at work for, that spilled into these hospitals and these clinics, and now Texas government. And today, no attorneys will represent me. Like I said, they think I'm dumb. How do I know this much? Because I studied the laws of God. in Hebrew, Aramaic, and Greek. So, and I know some stuff, right? And God's working with me. It seems like I don't hear God, I don't see God. I would like to, but I'm just like every other sound-minded American here in the United States of America, right? God don't reach out to none of us. Now I can look back and say, yeah, a miracle happened, but that miracle wasn't for me. When I got crushed, when I got assaulted, right? And when the doctor tried to kill me, right? Because he knew about the head injuries, all this stuff. These doctors were exploiting me, and they're still exploiting me. 4.5 years. Imagine that, because of my brain injuries. I forget things, you know. In my mind, I have PTSD. I'm stressed out. It's hard to walk. It's hard, to eat food, take showers, all that stuff, right? It's hard right now. I got to do my laundry, and I don't have a car because I can't drive a vehicle, but I'm trying to buy one so I can just get to the laundromat that's, not too far away from here. So I can do my laundry. I'm struggling in all areas of life, but I'm not depressed. I'm not drinking alcohol. I'm not using drugs, right? So I'm putting this video out there. The question is, so this is my story, right? And workers, look it up. I'm not lying. Right here in Texas, a Republican state. This is lobbyists. This is like the heart of the United States of America and lobbyism. I'm not crapping you. And I have bad luck. I had to come to Amarillo, Texas. Coming out of Colorado, coming to Texas, they should have a freaking state sign saying, "Welcome to Texas, enter at your own risk." Because they're still functioning like they're the Confederacy. I'm not lying. And that's what conservative Christianity means if you know American history, right? So people are being told, well, the Democrats are the KKK. Yeah, well, go look at American history and you understand that after the American Civil War, the Confederates infiltrated our ranks. They're allowed back into the Union, and down, a couple generations later, the grandchildren, it seems like, infiltrated the United States politician arena, right? Became politicians, passing law, all this stuff. That's what led into the Jim Crow era, right? Segregation. See, people go to these churches, but these churches won't tell you just, 40 years ago, 60 years ago in the 1960s, and before it, if you're white, you had to go to a white church, all white. And if you're black, you had to go to an all black church, Mexican and Asian, all that stuff. Jew over at the synagogue, right? Muslims over there. That's how bad the racism is and has been here in the United States of America. But keep in mind, there's always been good white people, right? Just like in every culture of people. There's good people and bad people. Good police officers, bad police officers. Good medical doctors, bad medical doctors. Good attorneys, bad attorneys. All that. It's just, that's the balance of life. Good and evil, good and bad, right? And you get to choose. Do you want to be a good person or you want to be a bad person? So the KKK got involved in the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. They infiltrated both political groups at this time. Go research American history or go to my Talking Box account on TikTok and look for the videos where I posted the news articles, just the references of how in American history, the KKK, that was the conservative Christianity, white supremacists from, Confederacy, like Texas is a conservative state because its history is Confederacy, enslaving people, white women not having rights, all that stuff, right? People of color have no rights, don't belong here. That's why they tell us today. That's why people know if you're Mexican American, you're blacks, whites, everyone's seeing us and hearing about us and being told to go back where we came from. That's impossible. My ancestors come from right here in the United States of America. A lot of people don't know about my tribe, Pascua Yaqui. Look it up on Google, and educate yourself. But I don't have no protections. I thought I was an American citizen, and now I come to a Confederate state, and now I'm being abused, violated, mistreated, right? All this stuff. So hopefully the Department of Justice gets involved, but press like on this video to help me to get my story out there. I'm trying to move forward. So I'm using social media because I'm actually learning how to rethink and how to retalk. If you can imagine about these brain injuries. So I ended up in a pavilion last year because I kept telling my psychiatrist before last summer of July, look, I don't know what's going on. I even called the Texas Crisis Hotline, telling them, informing them what's going on. So look, I was in a work accident, have brain injuries, and now my mind seems like it's wanting to process what happened. I understood I knew what happened, but for some reason, the aspect of my brain was like beginning to allow it or allow me or allowing itself to process that this actually happened. So I was in a daze for the last 3.5, after I got crushed and that assault from that medical doctor, I was in a daze for 3.5 years because I have a crush concussion. So it's just bad. They never diagnosed me with that. They said, in the diagnosis, in the medical file I have, it's a concussion. But remember, they told me it was a post-traumatic headache. But now they told Texas Department of Workers' Compensation it's a concussion, and Texas Department of Workers' Compensation knows it's a concussion and knows they didn't include it in my max medical improvement rating. Because remember, Shanahan and McNaughton law firm, McNaughton, not Shanahan, but McNaughton, she coerced me, telling me, because I had an issue. I said, look, how do I get an examination? What motions do I file? I was asking the Texas Office of the Injured Employee Council and Texas Department of Workers' Compensation. They both told me, including this law firm, this law attorney. She knows who she is. She knows what I'm talking about. And they told me in order for me to have a designated doctor examination where I can, because this is, I found out about more injuries through the Office of the Injured Employee Council, but the ombudsman wouldn't explain to me where they got this information from. Like, how'd you guys set me up for a max medical improvement rating and I missed the appointment? That I'm being penalized now, right? But what's the hurry to get me into a max medical improvement rating? Because I have 2 years by Texas law. I don't have to have a max medical improvement rating until up to 2 hours after or 2 years after my work accident. So what was the hurry to get me one in 3 months for my work accident, right? And these injuries, all this stuff. So they told me if I wanted to have a designated doctor examination, I had to also have a max medical improvement rating. So I had this appointment in Colorado. So I went back to Colorado. I think it was in Fort Logan or Morgan or somewhere on. I forget where. I had to look at my records, but I think that's illegal too. That's discriminatory by nature, right? Everybody else probably had a mass medical improvement rating, one appointment, and then a designated doctor examination apart from that appointment prior to the max medical improvement rating, because the purpose of the designated doctor examination is to have the medical doctor examine my body. And my neck swollen, right? What's wrong with my back? Why is it puffed out my left side? All this stuff. Why my stomach hurt? Why is it swollen? This is 4.5 years later now, and I can still show any medical doctor, look, why are you guys afraid to look at my body here in Amarillo, Texas? Shouldn't be a medical doctor, right? It's not like I'm the only one being victimized by doctors. Texas, go look at the TV series Dr. Death. That's how unregulated Texas is. So all you guys working here in Texas and going to get medical treatment, I'm telling you now, do it at your own risk. You're risking your life. You can't trust yourself with this government. They're not regulating policy and the laws here. Listen to my story, what I've seen about other stories. Even my wife at work was assaulted and denied medical treatment, all that stuff. And she's white. So white supremacists need to be mad about that from the Republican government here in Texas. I want to point that out, but I'm not racist. I'm not promoting violence. I'm just speaking my mind and saying, man, yeah, I'm against all hope, but I'm not afraid. I'm not depressed anymore. I'm recovering outside of medical treatment because God, it's on God's timing when God says to speak, or it just seems like when it's time, you just do it, right? I mean, that's how God operates and stuff. And I don't hear him. I don't see his voice, or I don't see his face or see him or any of that. I have no hallucinations, nothing, right? I just have post-traumatic stress disorder, severe post-traumatic stress disorder. And I've now finally am being treated in the last 3 weeks now, since December 6th, because prior to my medical appointment, I went to Texas Panhandle Center and was given different medication for the PTSD. But I'm still being denied medical treatment. I can't use insurance. I can't use my workers' compensation insurance. Can't use my Social Security insurance. What do I do? No attorney will represent me. The lobbyism is so bad here. These billionaires and millionaires, they control Amarillo court system, and that's why these law firms. That's why I can't hire an attorney, right? When I did, she's way over in Dallas. You know how much money she would have to spend just to travel 12 hours or 10 hours, right? If she drives from Austin, I mean, not Dallas, but Austin. You know how much money it's going to cost her to come and file a motion here in the court of Amarillo? And did she? She never did. So that max medical improvement rating, and because this attorney never told me I had a time limit to disagree with it or file a motion or whatever it is, right? And plus, it seems like she registered with Texas Department of Workers' Compensation. The question is, did she file any motions on my behalf here in Amarillo, Texas? And I can prove that she didn't. Right? Now I owe her money. So this is the question to the viewer. You, after hearing my story, right? You consider, is the Texas government now a tyranny? Because that's what it sounds like to me. American workers are dying left and right out here. You see the stunt Greg Abbott's pulling Christmas Eve, right? I mean, let me tell you the truth about this invasion of Mexicans, right? Because remember when the news, so here in Texas, people don't realize because they live here, right, all their lives or something, or just probably don't. I don't know. I'm dealing with God. I was crushed. I was assaulted. I was abused, right? And it seems like I just see things and see things as it is. So I call it out as it is. So these rich people and lobbyism here, millionaires, billionaires, they, probably the multi-billionaires. But anyways, they control the news agencies. No news agencies will listen to me. They won't interview me. They won't report on this. Amarillo Globe won't. I mean, I'm being shut down. I'm being blackballed. And that's what that worker, my coworker, had told me. So I'm actually experiencing it. Um, but here in Texas, there ain't no invasion going on at the border. If you go on TikTok and follow me, there's people that show their videos. They go down there, right? I seen white Americans going to the border to go report on TikTok this invasion that's happening. Mexican Chicanos here in Texas, right? And there ain't no invasion going on. And you have to understand the news is misrepresenting Mexican Americans here too, right? They call us Hispanic, Latino, all that stuff, but they hate to call us Chicanos or Mexican. And so stop calling us and dressing us as that. We're Mexican, we're Americans, all right? And a lot of us are going to be Jews. A lot of us are going to be Orthodox Jewish descendants from our great grandparents, the crypto Jews, But on the border, there's processing centers down there, you guys. So these illegal immigrants aren't coming into the United States illegally. They're asylum seekers. They turn themselves in to the Border Patrol. They take them to these processing centers, or they go to these processing centers. And the videos you see in the news, these are people traveling to these process centers, right? Or they have to wait outside because the process center is maximized, right? So they're on the other side of the border in Mexico waiting to be processed. They're turning themselves in. They're asylum seekers. Educate yourself on what the United States law recognizes in asylum seekers. These people are being persecuted in foreign countries. They're coming here like a lot of people's great grandparents that came from other parts of the world. They're here looking for protection, the right to life, the freedom to religion, everything that we take for granted here in the United States of America. That's what they're coming here for. They're legally allowed to be in here. For example, Greg Abbott, he's racist. Okay, I don't care what people say. He's racist. He's a conservative Christian. Look what he did Christmas Eve. He sent 130 illegal immigrants. That's what the news calls us, right? You might, if you're a Mexican, you live here in America, and you're a Mexican American, you brag about it, right? When they're calling these people illegal immigrants, they can't distinguish between me us and them. They don't know. Nobody knows. We don't even know what a Cuban looks like, and Puerto Rican or anybody, Guatemalan or Venezuelan and Central America and all this stuff, right? Like me, you're like, well, hey, are you Mexican? Like, yeah, but I'm native. I'm Pascual Yaqui. They're like, I never heard of that. And it's a United States federally recognized tribe. So they're talking about us. And that's why if you're Mexican American and even the black communities and the white communities, Asian communities, everyone that's not racist, they see we're being targeted. But where are we at? Divided, right? And that's why you have to be mindful with coworkers at work, no matter who you are. These cats, God forbid you get in a work accident and you die. These cats will falsify a statement to benefit the employer to minimize the monetary compensation given to your families. Okay, that's what I experienced here in Texas, here in Amarillo, and these statements that these coworkers had when I addressed it with Texas Department of Workers' Compensation, because the coworker told me he saw them lying, being coerced what to say. They had two different notebooks, right, rewriting these statements from a friend who's a Messianic Jew, right? Turn his back on me. What? Just to make a little bit of more money, just to keep his job, all that stuff, right? And now those statements aren't part of my workers' compensation claim. That's why I hope the Department of Justice gets a hold of this video. I hope somebody that has a conscience helps me out over here. It's a terrible thing when you have, I'm not saying the United States government is against me. I'm saying the Texas government by itself is against me. I'm innocent. I haven't done one thing wrong. And the laws don't protect me here. And they're trying to prosecute me, all this, different stuff. My life has totally changed, but I'm trying to keep afloat. I'm keeping a positive attitude because I know how America works. I know the history, right? And I'm waiting 4.5 years for my justice because I know eventually someone's going to advocate on my behalf and do the right thing. I'm being exploited because of my brain injuries, my physical injuries, right? Everything that I mentioned. Press like, share this video. Nobody wants to report this in the news media world. Department of Justice doesn't want to answer my complaints. The FBI, I'm actually on the FBI watch list. Okay, I found this out by Amarillo police officers. They told me I was. I haven't done anything wrong. I'm being treated now as a domestic terrorist when it's in fact the Texas government that's terrorizing me. And like I said, I have all the proof. I mean, this is a breakdown in Texas and its government. And remember, these are constitutional violations because everybody here in the United States of America, especially people of color, okay, we have equality with everybody, with non-colored Americans. And I'm just being violated, mistreated, discriminated. No attorney, right? I'm cut off. I'm blackballed. That's what the coworker described it as. Those are the exact words he used. He said he'd be blackballed. I'm being ostracized. For what? Doing nothing wrong, being a native Mexican and being a Jew, right? Working hard, making personal sacrifices at work, catching on really quickly, right? Because I worked myself up in 3 months to operate a front loader. I don't have construction experience. But that's what's happening. Still being denied medical treatment today. Sitting here suffering in pain, but I'm staying afloat. I'm keeping a positive attitude. I'm using social media to get my story out there. Also, I'm using social media to help deal with this stress, this extreme PTSD. I'm glad, thank God, Baruch Hashem, I haven't had a heart attack or a stroke, and that's how severe this stress is. And good thing I haven't committed suicide, but I'm staying afloat with God, right? Staying positive. Because American history tells me it takes, sometimes you have to wait years until you get your justice, until somebody starts doing the right thing. But remember the New Testament, Jesus Christ over there, Isu Christo, he said, the story about a woman, a widow, she kept going to the judge kept sending her away. Finally, the judge saw her coming one day, one day he saw this widow coming back to him with the same problem, asking for justice. And he thought to himself, I'm going to give her justice today. right? So the moral of the story is you got to keep asking for help. You guys got to publicly and intelligently keep asking for help. Eventually, people are going to get tired and say, let's give this guy some justice, right? Because that's the right thing to do. If this happened to me and another worker and other workers and my wife, all this stuff, right? It's going to happen to you. And that's why when I read this report last week about these two workers, which I think are Mexican Americans, because in this news report, I noticed either they call us Hispanic, but they never call us Mexican, they never call us Chicano, because that's how much they hate us. But these two workers, they won't identify. And what I saw, they're Mexican, their family members are. So the FBI is investigating that work accident, and they're finding this employer because they're not following. Texas government is not regulating labor laws here in Texas. I mean, it's the rich versus the poor here in Texas. That's literally what's going on. I wish I was lying. I wish I was fabricating. I wish I was insane, crazy, right? But for example, because the stress is so bad, and I'm finding out today about all these injuries. So this right here is part of my medical file for Texas Mutual Insurance Company. So, like I said, Texas Mutual Insurance Company was founded and created by Texas legislation. So it's no wonder why I'm being told there's powerful people involved in my workers' compensation claim, and nobody can help, right? And this is why this is an issue for the Department of Justice to come investigate, conduct a criminal investigation into my workers' compensation claim, because now these are civil rights violations. These cats are literally trying to murder me out here, and I'm making this YouTube video too, just in case these cats murder me. What's going to happen? My story goes away, right? And people keep getting crapped on. People will keep getting murdered. People will keep all, the way they attacked me, not only physically but mentally and emotionally. They try to destroy me. And good thing I'm in Texas though, because remember, there's a lot of cultist people here. This is a cult. This religion they're practicing, yeah, this is a cult. So when that work accident happened, when I was crushed and I never received medical treatment, no one called 911, God performed a miracle, not for me, but for here in Amarillo, Texas. It's been God that's been sustaining me up to this point, 4.5 years later. So press like on this video. Help me out. Do the right thing. Don't be a hater. Be a participator. I'm talking about my personal experience and how it's affecting everybody else, especially Mexican Americans are being targeted right here in Texas and obviously across the United States of America. And hopefully President Joe Biden does the right thing. It's so bad, I won't vote because I'm afraid I'll get retaliated, like in the manner I'm being retaliated for the last 4.5 years for filing a Texas injured workers compensation claim. And that's the truth, and I'll keep telling people the truth. There's 200 million people in the world that don't know that they're Sephardic and Ashkenaz Orthodox Jewish descendants, and that's a beautiful thing. The only person that could do something incredible like this is God, right? And since we're dealing with God, this isn't limited to just white Jews, right? Ashkenaz Jews, but this includes Sephardic Jews, a lot of them, Black, Asian, Mexican, Latino, Native, all that, Middle Eastern. So there, definitely God's moving in our time. This is what's happened to me, and this is what's currently happening to me. And I'm just trying to stay afloat with a positive attitude. And eventually, I need help over here, but eventually I want to give back to America, to our communities, right? Through education. I read the Bible in Hebrew, Greek, and Aramaic. Not fluently in Aramaic, but in Hebrew and Greek I do. And I want to pass on this education to other people to have the opportunity to actually read the Bible for themselves instead of relying on a translation, which is most of the time 95% of the time, not 85%, but 95% of the time is inaccurately translated in English from the Greek and the Hebrew and Aramaic. So, and it's time for us to start following the 7 Noahide laws. The people don't want to follow, they don't want to listen to the New Testament, right? Don't want to follow the laws of God. Then people that want to follow the laws of God, the 7 Noahide laws, will do that. Will create our own communities, right? And us that are Jews will follow the mitzvot, right? 613 commandments, which really isn't for a male and a female alone, right? I mean, it's split up and divided basically, or you know, so many for a male Jew and so many for a female Jew, and children, different things and stuff. So now I answer your question, or answer my question. What's your answer? Is Texas government a tyranny? You decide. I'm just telling my story. God bless you guys. Have a good night. Stay positive and just keep pushing forward.